Hello, today I'm in St Albans, Hertfordshire to look at what might be considered a pointless motorway, and indeed such is its pointlessness. In 2009 it was downgraded to become an A road, but whilst this may be the situation today, when the St Albans motorway first opened in 1959 it was actually rather important and played a crucial part in the early days of England's motorways. When it opened it was known as the M10 motorway and it ran for a little under 3 miles with no junctions along its length. It connected the A405 to the M1, and the M1 is the very reason the M10 was built in the first place. The M1, when it first opened, was a lot shorter than it is today and ran between junctions 5 and 18, and at each end of the motorway it came to an abrupt stop at a roundabout. This is in the days of no speed limits on the motorways and at a time when motorways were a brand new thing that had never been seen before, so it's easy to see how this might create some problems such as accidents or at best gridlock traffic as it tries to enter or exit the motorway. Road planners had already worked out that this might be a bit of a problem, and it's what led to the construction of the M10 motorway. The idea was to build a separate motorway spur connecting to the M1, giving traffic an alternative route option. This was deemed sensible because you didn't want all of the motorway traffic being forced onto a single small roundabout motorway terminus, and the M10 allowed a large portion of the traffic to enter or exit the M1 away from the motorway terminus, keeping traffic at a sensible level by distributing it around the local road network. Interestingly, they would employ the same tactic at the northern end of the M1, leading to the construction of the M45 motorway. The most interesting feature on the M10 is one that you can't really see from the motorway itself. Just before the M10 joins the M1, you'll cross over an Owen Williams bridge. Williams was an architect who was responsible for many of the late 1950s, early 1960s motorway infrastructure designs, and his most well-known bridges can be found on the original M1 between junctions 5 and 18. However, perhaps a lesser-known example can also be found right here on the M10. There was a similar bridge a short distance away that used to carry the M10 over the M1, but in the 1980s this was replaced with a far less desirable bridge because the M1 was widened. As a result of the M1's widening, the M10 had to be realigned slightly, hence the new bridge, and it's said that buried underneath the M10 carriageway are the remains of the original Owen Williams bridge. So what happened to the M10? Whilst it's still there in its physical form, it's no longer classed as a motorway and has been renumbered as the A414. This happened in 2009 for a couple of reasons. When the M10 was first built, the surrounding road network was fairly lacklustre, but as time has gone on, that's changed, and the most significant change would be the construction of the M25. This provided an alternative and better route to the M10, and as a result, the traffic numbers on the M10 steadily declined. Whilst this in itself didn't lead to the loss of the M10, it certainly contributed towards the decision of downgrading it, but it would be the M1 that would ultimately be responsible for the M10's demise. Perhaps ironically, the M1 brought the M10 into the world and the M1 is taking it out. The start of the end for the M10 would come in the mid-2000s, with more widening work planned for the M1, taking it up to a 4-lane motorway, and at the same time they took the opportunity to rearrange junction 8 of the M1. Where before the M10 had connected directly to the M1, this was no longer to be the case, and instead connecting roads would be built from junction 8 to the M10, separate from the M1. This meant that traffic using the M10 didn't need to use the M1, allowing for a direct connection to junction 8 and the A414 into Hemel Hempstead. However, with that came the awkward situation of the M10 now connecting up with an A road, and that wasn't going to work. But by this point, the M10 had become the oddball connection between sections of the A414. You had the A414 in Hemel running up to the M10, and you'd pick up the A414 again once you'd left the M10 at St Albans. We can see where this is going. It of course made more sense to downgrade the M10 to match the A414, which is what they did, and we've now got a continuous A414 from Hemel Hempstead to Hatfield that includes the M10 motorway. I say it includes the M10 because it's still here, more or less. Don't get me wrong, it was a fairly featureless motorway to begin with, but despite it's now the A414, it remains mostly unchanged since its original 1950s construction. So much like its sister motorway, the M45, if you want to experience the early days of motorway driving, then the M10, now A414, might be a good shout. It's just a bit bland. Thanks for watching.